Welcome back everyone, it's Chris from the tech team, and today I'm going to hopefully try and explain React Redux as quickly as possible. So this follows the same principle of a video that I've done recently on use context. It's just use context is the React native functionality. Redux just does it a slightly different way. It's all about how we manage state on a global scale. So for those of you that aren't familiar, if I need access to, say, my name in a component, that component has only got state localized to itself. It's constrained by its own component. So if I want access to, say, Chris's links over here and also Chris over here and maybe Chris down in the body, this state would have to be either passed down or passed up and then back down through the components. So for example, if I wanted access to it on the header, I'd have to go from the app down into header, then down into maybe the header links, and likewise I have to go from app down into main body, down into the sidebar, down into sidebar header, and then I think you get the idea. So just to demonstrate this, if I have a piece of state which is, say, logged in and a user ID and a name, if header links needs access to it, I need to pass it down from app down into pages, down into header, down into header links, and this is what we call prop drilling. And it becomes quite messy, because what happens if you want to change state or you want to add another piece of state onto it? Well, now you've got to go back through all of these components, change how it's handled, and then hopefully there's no spelling mistakes. It just leaves a lot of room for human error. So in steps React Redux. Redux introduces what we refer to as a store. You can think of a store as a container, but it essentially stores your state on a global scale. So it wraps your whole application, and bear in mind it doesn't have to wrap the whole application. It can only wrap like parts of the application. Typically what you'll find is people wrap the whole application to it because they don't know where the store will need to be accessed from. So by that I mean, if I remove this and I said, right, okay, it's only down to these components, only these components would have access to it because I've not wrapped the top level app into it. So what you'll find is people will wrap the whole application in the store and it will be provided to the whole container. What that allows us to do is, rather than pass the state down into every single component that needs it, we can just reach out from the individual component itself and reach into the store and then return the state. Likewise, if you wanted to update the state, you wouldn't have to pass it all the way back up. You could just dispatch an action, and that action will update the state, and then any components that are reliant on this store will just need to update. So let's jump in and see what that looks like in reality. So I've gone ahead and created a create React app. So this is the command for it. So npx create React app, and then I've just put in Redux explained, and I've just gone ahead and launched yarn start. So that will give me a local host. The only reason that I've gone ahead and done it ahead of time is because I've just made some components just to demonstrate the issue. So if I load up app.js, you'll see here, it's just reloading the window. You'll see here that if I want access to, say, the header links, I'd have to pass in state from as a prop down into header, and then from header I'd have to maybe deconstruct this and then pass it down into header link. And as you can imagine, with a lot larger applications, this is going to become quite tedious, because if I wanted to pass in, say, another piece of state, let's just say user ID, then I'd have to do something like maybe 1, and then I'd save that, take it down from header, and I'd deconstruct user ID, and then I could do something with user ID, but then I'd probably have to pass it back down into this one, and it becomes, a bit more of a larger task just managing state. So I'm going to remove this, and let's just work with just name for the time being. So what we want to do is, first of all, we want to install the toolkit. So open up a new window in terminal, and you want to yarn add at redux.js/toolkit, and then react-redux. I've already gone ahead and installed that on this application, but once you've done that, you should be good to go. We'll be in the exact same spot. I've not done anything else from that point. So I'm just going to leave this up here and close the window down. So first things first, we need to install some boilerplates, and it may seem quite daunting, but bear with me. It's one of those things where you set and forget, and you don't really have to do make many changes to it. But first of all, we will need to set up some boilerplate. So let's jump in. the first piece of boilerplate is going to be on the index file. So I'm going to load up the index file and I'm going to remove the React strict mode for the time being, and I'm just going to leave it in a fragment. Now what we need to do is we need to import a provider, and that provider is going to come from React Redux, React-Redux. And this is where we're saying like we wrap our application in a store. So this is going to provide something to the rest of the application. So I'm going to go ahead and put provider around our app. Now right now it's not providing anything, so we need to provide it a store. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and I'm going to say store, and it's going to come from, I'm going to put it in /app/store. Now we've not made this yet, but we will make it in a second. So if you are running it and you save this, your application will break. So if I pass in a prop, and that store is going to be equal to our store. I'm going to save that, and we can move away. We can close this file, and we don't have to worry about it. That's it. Like we've done everything that we need to with the index. So now our store is being provided to the whole app. So now I want to go ahead and create that store. So I'm going to do /app/store.js. And now what I want to do is I just want to come over and I want to show you the Redux Toolkit getting started. So if I have a look at this, we've already installed it. So this is the Redux Toolkit. I'll put the link to this down in the description. We need to make we've skipped a step, so it doesn't matter. This creates the store first. Then you create a store, which is literally just pull off the configure store from Toolkit, and then that's going to take an object, which is going to have a reducer key, and it's going to have an object for all of the reducers that we have. And then we need to create our, then we need to provide it, which we've already done, and then we need to actually create a slice, and the slice we'll talk about in a second. So let's do this bit first. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this in the interest of saving time, but there's no harm in you writing it out. And let's just load up Visual Studio Code quickly. And I'm going to save that. So right now, our store, we need to export our store. So export const store is equal to configure store, because that's what we had in our index. We had our store coming from store. So I've just exported the store. So now what we need to do is we need to actually set up our reducer. So right now we've got no reducers in our actual reducer store. So convention for this is to whack this in features, but you can whack it wherever you want. So I'm just going to say /features/app/app_slice.js. So I'm going to create a slice in a features folder, and first of all I need to import create slice, and that's going to come from the toolkit, so at Redux Toolkit. And then I'm going to export a const, which is app slice, and then that's going to be create slice. And this slice is just going to take an object. So what we pulled off here, so this object is going to take in a name, an initial state, and then some reducers. So let's just pull up the actual toolkit tutorial, and I'm going to scroll down, and let's just have a look at our slice. So it's going to contain a name, it's going to contain an initial state, and it's going to contain some reducers. And then we'll get to the actions in a moment. So let's go ahead and just set ours up. So I'm going to open Visual Studio Code back up. I'm going to say name, and this is going to be app for our app slice. We're going to have an initial state, which I'm going to just say our name is Chris. And then I want some reducers. So make sure that we get a comma on there, and I'm going to say reducers. I'm going to pass it an object of reducers. So as I said, the reducers is just a way for you to update the state. So what do we want to do? I'm going to say change name. Okay, change name, and that is going to take some state, and it's going to take an action, and that's going to be equal to a function. And then what we want to do is, when the action is received, we're going to receive a payload with it, and I want to set the payload to the current. I want to set the state to the payload. So what I mean by that is I'm going to say state.name is now going to be equal action.payload, and I'm going to save that. And now what we need to do is we just need to export these actions. So I'm going to come down here. Oh, that is not how you spell export. I'm going to say export const, and I'm going to export change name, and that is going to be equal to app slice dot actions. And then finally, I want to just export default app slice dot reducer. So we've exported our reducers, we've got our actions, and so now what we should be good to go actually. So let's go back to our store and just import everything here. So I'm going to import our app slice. Was it app slice? No, app reducer from dot slash features slash app slice. Brilliant. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say our app is going to be using the app reducer. So like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of boilerplate, but this is one of those things where it's kind of set and forget. You know, like we don't really need to do any changes to our store now, unless we wanted more reducers and more, you know, and different kind of slices. So for that, I mean, like you might have like a user state, a user slice, a theme slice, an application slice. You know, like you can have multiple different slices if you wanted to. But then obviously if we wanted to change or add to our state here, then we'd do all of our work in our slice folder, because we've got the initial state and then we've got how we update our state. So enough talking, let's see how we actually extract this state now from our store. So I'm going to reload our window, and I've got my console here. If I open up my Redux tools and I click on state over here, you can see that we've got an initial name of Chris. You know what? Let me just change the name just so we know that like there's nothing funny going on. So let's change it to Archie. So I don't know why hot reload isn't working, so let's just reload. Go to state, and then the app currently is called Archie. So although we've got Chris being passed down as a prop, we do have some global state called Archie. So now I'm going to go to my the application that I want to pull that name off from, and let's go to sidebar welcome Chris. So let's go to sidebar, and then sidebar link, and then so this is taking a name. So if I take this off and I just say welcome with some exclamation marks, save that, make sure that we've got the right file. We do. We've got welcome with some exclamation marks. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a selector because I want to select something from the store. So I'm going to say use select, and that should import it. And then let's, okay, why is my auto import not working? It doesn't matter if it doesn't, but let's just do that. Okay, there we go. So now what we've got is I'm going to say user is equal to state dot app, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to console log user. So all we're doing here is, let's just create some space around this. So we are just importing useSelector from React Redux. We're going to set a a variable to the useSelector, and that's just going to take in a function which is going to grab the state, and then it's going to return state.app, and then we're going to console log that state. So let's just quickly save that and load up our window. I'm going to come back, and you can see our user has got the name of Archie. So our user has got a name of Archie. So what we could do here is we could say welcome user.name. And the reason that we've got user.name is because our slice here has got the app of name, but we've got a name. So we've exported, we've taken the state of this, we've put it into something called user, and then we've got user.name. So if I come back to sidebar link, we've got user.name. So now if I load up the page, what we should have is welcome Archie, and we do. Brilliant. So now we're taking no props at all down. This is just reaching out to our store. And you may be thinking, well, okay, what about the rest of the application? So let's just do the exact same over there. So now I can go back to our app, go to sidebar, I can get rid of Chris, because we don't need to pass that down anymore. And let's go to into sidebar and then get rid of name again. So get rid of that, get rid of the props, save that, make sure it's still working. It is still working. And then let's just do the same process for header link. So I'm going to come to app, I'm going to remove our props, save that. I'm going to go into header, remove the props, save it, come into header link, and then header link it says welcome back. So again, let's just get rid of this and welcome back, some exclamation marks, make sure that the application is still working. It is, because we've got welcome back with some exclamation marks. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do the exact same as we've done a second ago. So use selector, so I'm going to import that, and then I'm going to say, let's just write this one out because it's being funny. Const user is equal to use selector, and then that's just going to take in a state, and it's going to return to me state.app. So now what I can do is I can, because I've got to have the name on here, so I'm going to say user.name. Save that, come back over to our application, and it's welcome back Archie. So now what we could do is, because we've only got a single piece and like we only care about the name, is we could actually deconstruct that and we could say name. We can get rid of that, and there you go. We've got welcome back Archie. Now we can take it a step further. We can actually dispatch a selector. So we can have a selector in our app slice. So what I could do down here, actually, you know what? Let's not confuse matters too early. Let's just leave it for a second and let's actually dispatch an action. So now what I want to do is let's just have a button in our header, and that button is going to fire an event. So I'm going to say on click, do something. So I'm going to say handle user name change. Okay, and I'm going to create that. So I'm going to say function handle name change. Actually, let's just do this as const equals. There we go. Let's do it like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, right, okay, I want to dispatch an action. So when I click this button, so click me, I want to update the state for the whole application. So I want to update the store. So what I need to do is I need to dispatch an action. So I'm going to say const dispatch is equal to use dispatch. Oh, my auto imports are all messing up. So let's just say import. Brilliant. So it's equal to use dispatch. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dispatch an action. So let's say dispatch something. So let's come back over to our store. What was it? Change name, I think it was. Not store, slice. Change name. This is what I want to dispatch as an action. So I'm going to dispatch change name, and that is going to be over to Rosie. So we need to obviously import this. So let's import it and save. Now we may need to put this in a use effect, but let's just see how it plays. So we've got a button. We had click me, and everything changed over to Rosie. So now if we open up our Redux, have a look at our state, and our state is now Rosie. So if I reload the window, we should get Archie, because Archie is default. If I go to a state, we get name Archie, and if I click me, now our state in two different components, welcome back Rosie and welcome Rosie, has changed because we've dispatched an action. Now, a moment ago I said, shall we use a selector? And I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's just reload this. I've got welcome back Archie and welcome Archie. Now, if I load up my window and come back to our use selector, so let's just comment this a little bit actually. Let's just say grab the name from our store, and then this is going to be update the store. name. Okay, so now while we've got this use selector and we're writing state and a function or whatever, this can become a little tedious if you're doing the same kind of stuff all over the place. So I'm not always returning back the name. So what I could do here is I could create a selector within my slice. So let's just save this a second, come over to slice, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to export a const. I'm going to say select, let's just say select name, and that's going to equal state dot app dot name. So save that, and now because we're exporting this, we're always going to be returning the name from our state. So our app state, then our app state, and then our name from the app state. So now if we go to header link, I think we're in, yeah, and we can just say select name, and I'm just going to import this select name from our slice. And so now what we should have is the exact same outcome. So if I reload this, and it is. So now what we can do is, rather than having to write out state and grab the state dot user and then deconstruct it all the time, we can literally just use a selector and we can say select name. And just to further demonstrate this, we could do something like our initial value is name and our user ID is 2. And what I could do is I could say, let's actually select the ID, and then I'm going to return the user ID because I'm going to reach into the state, I'm going to grab the app state, and then I'm going to grab the user ID from that, and I'm going to use the select ID. So I'm going to save this, I'm going to come over to our use selector, I'm going to say name, I'm going to say user ID, select ID, make sure that we import that, and so now we should have user ID available to us. Welcome back Archie, and then your user ID is, and then we should just be able to do user ID. Save that, load up our window, reload, and welcome back Archie, your user ID is 2. And we can still click update because it's on this state is only worried about the actual the name of it. So the user ID is 2. So this is only showing us the difference right now, but we've still got our user ID as 2 because our action only updated that. And again, I suppose let's just further demonstrate that one final time by creating a different reducer, and let's say change user ID. I'm going to take in the state, I'm going to take in an action, and then I'm going to say state.user ID is going to be equal to action.payload. So whenever I dispatch change user ID, it's going to change the user's ID from 2 to something else. So we obviously need to export that down here in our actions, and then I'm going to come back to header link, and then when we dispatch the change the name, let's also dispatch another action, another reducer, which is going to be change user ID, and then the user ID is going to be 1234. Save that. We obviously need to import it. That's why it's giving us some error warnings. So I just press Control and Spacebar, and it will give me a list of options, and I can also import. Save that. Come back. Change user ID is not defined. Just reload. Hot reload is having an issue. So our state at the moment is Archie and user ID is 2. We click update and we get Rosie, and our user ID is 1234. And one final one. Let's just go back down to sidebar where we are using the selector. We can obviously call in select name now, and now we've got name, and let's get rid of that. Name is equal to name, and then user ID is equal to, I forgot what we've called it already, select ID. Welcome. Again, your user ID is equal to user ID. Save this, reload, and we've got the state in 2 different locations. So look guys, I know that there's a lot of boilerplate on everything that we've just done, so I just want to quickly blast through a recap. And so what we've got on our index is a provider, which comes from React Redux, because we want to provide our application with a store. So that store is going to be a store that we make. So I'm pulling off a variable store from App Store. If we go to App Store, all we've got here is that we've got a variable which is equal to configure store, and then it's just got an object with our reducers inside of it. So the configure store comes from the toolkit, and then the reducers we need to individually make. If we wanted more reducers, we could do something like user and have like a user reducer. But we've kept it simple by just having a single reducer in this case. That reducer comes from our slice. So if I open up our app slice, which is in features app slice, and again, the reason that I've kept it like this is because we could have multiple slices. That slice creates everything for us, kind of all in one hit. And so we get our initial state, we get the name of it, we get our reducers, and we also get our actions. We've also gone a step further and we've included selectors. So what I've got here is we imported create slice from our toolkit. Then we've got export the app slice, and we need to give it a name. So we've given it the name of app, and we've given it an initial state. The initial state is name of Archie and user ID of 2. Then our reducers individually update these components, so update the name and update the user ID. How we do that is by declaring a function, which is a reducer, which is going to be change name, and that's going to be a function which takes in state and an action. The action, which is what gets passed down here, which is going to contain a payload. So the payload is what gets passed back. So if I come back to headers and I look at our dispatch, we've got change name, and then we've got something in here. So this is the payload. Now, because we've only got a single component in here, we can just reference action.payload. But say if we had an object in here, and say that object was name, and then we also had a user ID, and said that was 1, 2, and we save this, and we go to our app slice, our action.payload would equal to an object now. So our name would equal to that object. So we'd have to obviously pull off name from that object, and then we could also update the user ID here as well, user ID. And so change name just doesn't make sense. I'm not going to go through and change all of the everything that we've done just there, but I think hopefully that makes sense. Because we're only passing in a single payload, we can just reference it straight away by action.payload. So we just set the state to the action of the payload, and then we obviously need to export our actions, which is the name of our reducers, and those actions is what we just called. And then down here with the selectors, what we've done is we're just saying, right, grab the state and then return to me elements from that state. So let's just say this state was quite significant and I had objects and arrays and whatever in here. I could just pull off individual elements of that state, and then I could use that. Right now, all we're doing is selecting the name. So we're just taking the state, then we're going to the app state, and then we're going to the name of the app. So name, and then within the app. And then that will return to us the name of the user. So in this case, Archie. And so now we can use a selector and select name. So we need to make sure that use selector and select name are both being imported. First from React Redux, and then from our slice. And now we've got name available to us anywhere in the application. So hopefully that makes sense. If you do have any questions, as always, please feel free to leave a comment down below. But until next time, guys, take it easy.